Now we're trying to keep the lecture as concise as possible. I mean, we're talking about a massive period of time, a massive important period of time, not only for the Muslims, but for the whole of Europe, and then in the long run also for the whole of the world. We're talking about Al-Andalus today. A little bit about myself. As the brother mentioned already, I'm born in Greece, in Athens. I'm of Greek origin. I grew up in Germany. I got my degrees from Germany, universities there. I moved to this country in 2001 and realized that because of the language, English being the only world language nowadays, there's a lot that can be done due to having the ability to understand and to speak this language. You can go further out and inform people about the wonderful deen of Islam. Now, I accepted Islam 22 years ago, alhamdulillah, in the 1990s. There was a time of upheaval. When was it actually never a time of upheaval? And I was told that it's not a good time to accept Islam now because there's a lot of problems around us. If I'd left it to nowadays, I wonder what they would have said to me nowadays. So if we look into this, and I want to start with that, there is never a better time than the time that you're in. If you want to understand what Islam really means, look into what Islam came with. Our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, peace be upon him, came with the Quran and his Sunnah. Everything that we need to know is there. We're talking about thousands of books. We're talking about a lot of narrations that are extremely important for us to understand the way of life of our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the understanding of this deen. And I use the word deen purposely because I don't think the translation religion is correct. Okay? Islam is more than just a religion. It is not something that we use to go to the masjid on Friday, you go to the mosque and that's about it. The rest of the day doesn't mean anything. Every minute, every second of our breath actually is Islam. Islam means submission. Yes, there is the same root in there, salam, which means peace, but Islam does not just mean peace. Okay? And we don't have to be apologetic to anyone. Peace is part of Islam, but it's not Islam. Islam in itself means submission. Submission to the will of Allah, to the will of God. And that's what a Muslim does. A Muslim is supposed to submit to the will of God and to his rules and regulations. And you know what? Without knowing, I don't know, do we have any non-Muslims here? Any non-Muslims? It's nice to have once in a while. No? All Muslims. Good, alhamdulillah. If you're all Muslims, still, you are, as a person, you have a conscience. You have a will, you have a mind, and you can make up your mind. You can decide if you want to be that, or if you want to do this, or if you want to do that. If you want to go to the right, or if you want to go to the left. If you want to drink this, or if you don't want to drink this. If you want to eat this or not. But my arm, that's it. If I go further, I'll break it. You know what you call this in Arabic? Muslim. My arm is a Muslim. My leg does not go further than when I stretch it. It doesn't go further than where it goes. That's a Muslim. Automatically, each body, each part of our body, everything we possess are Muslims, is a Muslim. So now, I hope you understand that Muslim is not just a specific system that started in the 6th century and is somewhere today nowadays with some billions of followers. Being a Muslim in Arabic means I have submitted to the will of God. So anybody who has submitted to the will of God is a Muslim. So the people before the system of Islam, before Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came, who submitted to the will of God and their understanding and rules, they were also Muslims. And that's why we say Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, the Prophet of Islam, was also a Muslim. Jesus was a Muslim as well as Musa. Moses was a Muslim as well as Abraham was a Muslim. All these were Muslim prophets. Now with the understanding of what I just explained with Muslim. Not with the understanding as nowadays being Muslims praying 5 times a day and following the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. No, there was no Prophet Muhammad at that time. The Prophet was Musa, Moses, Abraham, and so on and so on. And they submitted to God. And that's what you call in Arabic, Muslim. Any questions regarding to this? Not yet. Good. Let's come to the main point. But this is a very important point to understand. It's a very important point to understand. We're talking about Al-Andalus, right? Or we're going to talk about Al-Andalus, inshallah. If I just throw this wonderful word into the audience, and I would like you to give me an idea, what do you think is or was Al-Andalus? Any idea? Yes, brother? Spain.
Civilized.
Civilized. Any other ideas? Country. Okay. Anything else? Islamic Spain. Okay. Anything you mentioned until now is all partly true. And this is what in the mind of certain people is hanging around. But actually there's no order, there's no structure. We don't really know what it is, do we? As Muslims as well as non-Muslims. Al-Andalus. Andalusia, the Spaniards say today. Andalusia. And then they mean just a province in the south of Spain. But that was not Al-Andalus. And again, you mentioned Spain. No. It's partly true. It's not only Spain. It was also Portugal. It was also Gibraltar. Part of Spain if you want to. But it was also Portugal. Now, if we are talking about Al-Andalus, and I would like to make this clear from the beginning, then I don't just refer to a specific point on a map. I don't just refer to the Iberian Peninsula, as it's called. Portugal and Spain are called the Iberian Peninsula. So I'm not just referring to them, but I'm referring to the time period of 711 to 1492. And within this time period, a lot of things were happening. A lot of things were happening, especially in Europe. Okay? Yes, Spain was open to the Muslims. Portugal was opened by the Muslims. Italy, Sicily, up to Bari Brindisi, Rome. That's Italy, not only Sicily, the island of Sicily. The island of Malta. Have you ever heard of this island? It was once part of the British Empire. France, Fraxine, we'll talk about this one as well. Crete, the island of Crete in the south of Greece, which is now part of Greece, and so on and so on. These are all parts that nowadays belong in states or countries which all had once a Muslim past. And not just for 1 or 2 years, but from decades to even centuries. And not only did Al-Andalus have a past with the Muslims, but a lot of things that the Muslims left behind play until nowadays a very important role in Spain and in Portugal especially, but also in Sicily. Now, next challenge. Take a look at this one here. I have some words there. We don't have enough time. Normally what I do, I divide you in groups and I get you to go through the words. We don't have this time nowadays. That's part of the workshop. But I want you to look at these words. And I want you to tell me one word that you recognize out of there and to explain, give me definition. Yes, bro.
Ojalá, inshallah in Spain.
Ojalá, this one is Spanish, and this one is Oxalá, this is Portuguese, and they mean indeed inshallah. The Spanish and the Portuguese speaking people use these terms in their language on a daily basis. Not the Muslims. They're not Muslims. The Spanish and the Portuguese speaking people in Portugal, in Spain, in Brazil, in South America, wherever, they use these terms meaning, I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah, as we say in Islam, using the Arabic terminology inshallah. In Spanish, it has remained as ojalá. Have you ever heard, what does the torero say? The torero with a toro, with a bull. What does the torero say? He says, ole. What is ole? Allah. Ole is Allah. It comes originally from the term Allah. That means, oh Allah, help me. And hey, everybody who's seen a bull will understand what he means with that. So, the torero in Spain, and also in Portugal, and in other parts of the world where they use this bullfighting situation, they use this term, ole, without really knowing where it comes from and what it means. That's one of the remainders of the Muslim past of this part of the world. What else?
Cordoba.
Cordoba. What is Cordoba?
It's a capital city of Andalusia.
Okay. Now, Cordoba is part of Andalusia nowadays, which is a province of Spain, but it used to be the capital of Muslim Spain before. Okay, so Cordoba, this one here, that used to be the capital of Muslim Spain before, during the time of the Muslims. What is the equivalent of Cordoba in Portugal? Does anybody remember or know from a workshop before maybe? Anas, do you remember? Portugal, what's the equivalent of Cordoba in Portugal? Nowadays Portugal, look here, it's here. No. Silves. Silves used to be the capital of the Muslims on the Portuguese side. There was, of course, at that time no Portugal and Spain, because the nations are new nations, and the idea of nations is something, developed in the 18th, 19th century, from the French Revolution onwards. But the part which is nowadays Portugal, the main capital city, or the main city that the Muslims used and developed, was Silves. Silves in Portugal and Cordoba in Spain. Okay? Now, anything else? Any other idea? Moros, okay. What about Moros? This one here? Moros, yeah, what? Say it again, please, loud.
How they call Muslim?
Who?
The European?
Okay. Specifically who?
Spain?
Okay. In Spanish and in Portuguese, indeed, the term Moros referred to the Muslims. Anybody has any idea what it means actually, where it comes from originally? Moors in English, yes. Moors in English, it comes from there. So Moros used in Spain and taken over into the English language as Moors. Yes, the Moor. So what does it mean? Have you ever seen a Moor in Shakespeare's play? Have you ever, if I tell you Moor, what do you think of? What does this person look like? Thank you. Now, Moor comes from the Greek word mavros, which means black. Have you ever heard of the country Mauritania? Mavritania in Greek. Mavros means black again, is the country of the blacks. Like Sudan, again in Arabic, means the country of the black. Aswad, Sudan. So, this term was taken from Greek. A lot of things are taken in the European languages from Greek, of course. We should not forget the cradle of European civilization is Greek civilization. The cradle of European civilization is Greek civilization, and the cradle of the world, with regards to the Western world, is without a doubt Greek civilization. Even the Romans copied the Greeks. They came to Greece, they submitted the Greek tribes, and then what they did, they just took the 12 gods over, gave them another name, made it sound more Latin, and suddenly they had 12 gods again, which were exactly doing the same job the Greek gods were doing before. So now, Mavros, black. So these people, the Spanish Christian people, would give the Muslims who came from okay, what is this? Which continent? Look here. Spain, Africa. Okay, so what is nowadays Morocco, Algeria, North Africa. So the Moors, the Muslims came from here over to Spain. The first Muslim who set foot in Spain, the first Muslim ever to set foot in Europe was who? Tariq bin Ziyad. Any idea why Gibraltar is called Gibraltar? That's where he landed. Why is it called Gibraltar, Yasser?
Because the rock of Tariq.
Jibr al-Tariq. Jibr al-Tariq in Arabic means the rock, the mountain, the hill of Tariq. Have you seen Gibraltar? Gibraltar is nothing else but a big hill, a big rock, with some people around it, and that's British colony. Okay? And monkeys. So now, Gibraltar actually means Jibr al-Tariq, the mountain, the hill of Tariq. Who Tariq? Tariq bin Ziyad, who was the first Muslim who came from North Africa and set foot in Europe. This person who came from North Africa, right, was an Arab, right? Do we have any North Africans here? Oh yeah, I can see it, yes. Yeah, Libyan, yes. I mean, okay, any yes. North Africa? Algeria? No. Where are you from, Aki? Morocco? Libya. Okay. Seeing that Tariq came from North Africa, he was an Arab, right? Right? Wrong. He was a Berber. He was a Berber. He was not an Arab. What is a Berber? What is a Berber? Any difference between a Berber and an Arab? Yes. As different as French and German. As different as British, as Welsh and English. Say it again. Exactly. The Arabs came from the Arabian Peninsula, and they came from Egypt all the way through North Africa to Morocco. And from North Africa, Islam spread downwards. And we're going to talk about this one quickly, inshallah. But the Arabs came from the Arabian Peninsula. People who were living there, indigenous people, were called Berbers. Who called them Berbers? There we go again. Who called them Berbers? What does it mean, Berbers? Any idea? Exactly. Barbarian and Berbers, exactly the same meaning, exactly the same word. Who called other people barbarian? The Greeks, especially under Alexander the Great. Why? Why? Yes, bro.
Where did their language come from, the Berbers' language? They speak Arabic and they speak Berber.
No. Wait. First this question and then we'll come back to this one, inshallah. So, Berber, the Greeks called them Berbers, barbarian. Why? Because, var, I don't understand your language. Var. I don't know what you're saying. Understand? So, barbar, varvaros in Greek means var. I don't know what you're saying. So, because you don't speak Greek, you must be a barbarian. You're somebody who is out of my civilization and culture. Now, do you understand why history is important? We're not going to speak about this importance of history, which is always very important to mention at the beginning of a lecture like that. But history is extremely important in order to understand why certain people are like certain ways. They have certain ways, and why certain people are like this. You will not be able to understand the French state nowadays and this fascist secularism that they are following in France if you do not understand the French Revolution, if you don't understand what led to the French Revolution and what happened after the French Revolution. You will not be able to understand how German people think if you don't understand their history, their background. And if you learn German, you will not be able to avoid being busy with German and German-speaking areas' history. We learn English not just because it's the world language, yes it is, but you will not be able to avoid having read Shakespeare if you go to school to learn English. You will not be able to avoid literature, which plays such an important role in the English language, for the development of the English language as well. So, you cannot cut the one from the other. So, the Greeks, which used to be a big empire, one of the biggest actually that time, in ancient times before the Romans came, they used to call people who didn't speak Greek barbarians because we didn't understand them. So that's why you call them barbarians. This term was taken over and these people are called Berbers. Same thing. Now, the Berbers have a totally different language to the Arabs. Totally different. Has nothing to do with the Arabic language, and it was there before the Arabic language. Okay? And it's a language of its own rights. Okay? Now, what is happening with this, why I'm mentioning this, that does not mean that because they are Berbers or because they are different people, that they have different kind of, what can you call it, that they are different people in a way of, we're all people. But I'm mentioning that there were Berbers, that Tariq bin Ziyad was a Berber, because people misunderstand, they think Islam is an Arabic thing. Okay? In certain parts of the world, it's either Arabic or Turkish. In my part of the world, it's Turkish. So now, to understand that Islam is a world deen, you have to also understand what happened during the history of Islam. And this is a part of the history of Islam as well. When Tariq bin Ziyad came to Spain, to Europe first, as a Berber, he brought with him Islam and the Arabic language, because Arabic, ladies and gentlemen, is what we just prayed in. We just made our salah. I'm not an Arab, but I was an imam during the time that we led Asr, Salat al-Asr, the prayer. And I prayed in Arabic, because that's a common language that we have as Muslims. Unification of Muslims is a very important thing. To unify the Muslims is a very important issue. And this is what the Arabic language does. Not because it is better than Greek, and not because it's better than English. No, it's another language like all the others. But the Arabic language is used for the Quran. The Arabic language is a language that is mentioned in the Quran, that we learn to pray, that has a specific way of introducing things that other languages cannot do. Now, the wisdom that Arabic has cannot be compared to many other languages, not even to Greek, although Greek is one of the richest languages in the world, without a doubt. Now, if we look at Europe, okay? Now, take a quick look at Europe, okay, just have it in front of your eyes. Now, here we are, the UK. Okay, now we have Ireland next to us, right? This part of the world is called Scandinavia. Now this is Central Europe, right? Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, the Mediterranean countries like Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, and even France. Now, when the Muslims came from the north, they went to Spain, they went to Portugal, and they went further into France. And they went further even. From France, they went even to this country here. What is this country? Switzerland. Believe it or not, Switzerland used to be once part of the Muslim world. For around 50 to 60 years, Switzerland was a Muslim country. That was in the 10th century. Now, come back again to the point of the words. Any other word you know? Fraxine, fraxinetum. I think you mentioned this before, Anas. Fraxine. This one here. Any idea? I need some water.
No, I got
You mentioned it. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I got it wrong.
Okay, anybody, any idea? Listen to the pronunciation. Fraxine, yeah.
Is that where the Muslim Empire stopped? Came to us at home?
Not exactly, no. Yes, it is French, and it is here in the south of France, that's called the Provence, okay? A province of France which is called Provence. There, the Muslims had come from Spain, Andalusis they called them because they were from Andalus. They came by boat and they settled here. Not at the very beginning of Islam, because they came from the beginning in the 8th century, 711, as I said, 711, when Tariq bin Ziyad arrived in Spain. Within 8 years, they had actually reached already Tours and Poitiers, where they were beaten. In 732, the official historical sources say that they were beaten by Charles Martel, but we don't have accurate information about this. But indeed, what we know is that the Muslims stopped. Tours and Poitiers is not far from Paris, around 70, 80 kilometers from Paris. So they were stopped in France in 732. Now, from there on, they hung around France for a while, but the main base was Spain and Portugal, Al-Andalus. But around 150 years later, they arrived here by boat, and they settled in the Provence. In the Provence, there's a very, very small, tiny village nowadays, which is called, there is one town which is called Fréjus, and there is another town which is the remainder of what used to be Fraxinet. I don't have it in front of me, but I will find it, inshallah. So there's a tiny spot in France nowadays which used to be called Fraxinet, in Latin Fraxinetum, in Arabic Farakshinet, which meant that that time the Muslims settled in this part of the world, and from there, it was closer. From here, they went to Switzerland and opened Switzerland. I use the term open, not conquer, because I like to translate the Arabic terminology. And conquest means something different. You know, people have in mind, conquest, killing people. You know, I'm not saying that they went with roses there. I'm not saying that they didn't fight. But people in Fraxine, and in Switzerland, and in Spain, and in Portugal, and in Sicily, and in Greece, and wherever the Muslims went, they welcomed them most of the times. You know why? Because they were suppressed by the rulers from before, even if the rulers were Christians, above Christians. The Jews, for example, in Spain, joined the Muslims and celebrated them as liberators. The same many Christian peasants, because they were fed up with the Germanic rule of the Visigoths who were ruling Spain before. These people from a tribe called Visigoths, which was a Germanic tribe, they were ruling Spain before, and King Rodrigo is known for being, well, he was quite a strong, strict king, if you want to call it that way, but the taxes that they imposed on the people living there under them, Christians, were unbearable. So when the Muslims came to Spain, they were not intending to stay in Spain. Because I want to make this clear here. I want you to imagine 8th century Europe. 700, in the year 700. What do you know about Europe in the year 700? Yeah, let me just make this clear, because last week I had a running here with somebody, not in this university, another university. I was accused of being, telling you how to hate Europeans. You know, I myself, I'm a double European. I'm more European than anyone here in this area, I'm sure. I have a European education, and I'm a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. Now, when I look at things, then of course I look at the things as I was taught, but then of course you develop further. You look further into the things and you look into different sources. The chance that I had, because I speak 6 languages, European languages, opened my horizon to not just concentrate on one specific book or one specific source. Okay, may it be English source or may it be French or German. So all these sources have different authors many times. So you compare and you see, what do historians from this country say? What do historians from that country say? And what do they have in common? So that if we compare them and if we look into them, then again, I'm challenging you to look into Europe of this 8th century. What do you know of Europe of the 8th century? And I'm not talking about Britain. There was really nothing. There were people around, and if we believe Darwin's theory, we don't, then they are very close to the first idea that Darwin had about people. But we don't believe in that. So I'm just giving you the idea of what it looked like in Europe at that time, right? It was an absolute backwards continent. Nobody was interested in coming to Europe as we look at it nowadays, because we have the idea now, 21st century, we're looking at Europe, wow, the Muslims wanted to come over to Spain and conquer Europe and what for? But they had much more, Africa had much more to offer, Asia had much more to offer than Europe. So why did the Muslims come here? Why? Because they were asked to. They were asked to. They were asked to by a certain person who was called Julian in English, Julian. Count Julian, from a very small enclave in the north of Morocco, up here. It still exists nowadays, and this part is still Spanish territory. It's called Ceuta. There are 2 Spanish territories in the north of Morocco. One is Ceuta and the other one is Melilla. These 2 territories are still Spanish nowadays. That time, Ceuta was run by Count Julian, and he wanted Rodrigo's throne in Spain. So he said to the Muslims, listen, guys, I give you Ceuta, then you have the whole of Africa, and you give me Spain. They said, cool deal. So what do you want us to do? Go over, get rid of Rodrigo, and you get the last part of Spain, of Africa. Fine, sounds good. North Africa was already Muslim, except these small enclaves in the north. So he said, okay, we're going, and we're going to send Tariq bin Ziyad with 700 people. We don't need more. And when they went there, the people, the Jews and the Christians, begged the people to stay there and told them, listen, we are suppressed by this king here. We are suppressed by Rodrigo. So help us out. Many of them accepted Islam, understood the Islamic system, and saw that if the Muslims stayed in Spain, then the Islamic Spain would be much more tolerant and much more open-minded towards the Christians, who were considered Ahl al-Kitab, people of the book in Islam, than the way that they were treated before by their own people. For that reason, Tariq bin Ziyad decided to tell them, the Sultan, listen, we have to stay here, and people are willing to come to us. So why leaving? So they didn't come to Europe because it was so much to gain, as people misunderstand here. You have a lot of voices coming out there from people who have no idea of history, and they come and tell you that we kept the Muslims out of Europe in 732, Tours and Poitiers. Again, historical data do not prove 100% that it was a whole Muslim army that was fought against. Okay, some sources say it was a small group, pirates. They just went up there, they fought, and that was it. And it was made big by the Europeans in order to make them feel better, of course. Because, hey, they were losing against a civilization like that. Islamic civilization in Spain and in Portugal brought us in Europe the Renaissance. What is the Renaissance? The Renaissance in English, yes. Renaissance. So what is the Renaissance? The Enlightenment. Listen to the word. What does this mean? It enlightened these Christians finally. It gave them finally some ideas about the world. That they didn't believe anymore that the earth is flat. Okay? And they were not persecuting the witches anymore. Innocent women, right? You know what they used to do in Europe in the Middle Ages? They used to have, a very scientific, advanced way of thinking with regards to women. So they would accuse a woman of witchcraft. So now, what would they do with this woman who they would accuse of witchcraft? Scientific methodology is the following. They would throw her in the river with a big stone, a big rock on her, right? So if she sinks, she was not a witch. If she comes up, then she was a witch, so we burn her on the stake. So anyhow, the poor woman would die. That was scientific Europe of the Middle Ages, my friend. And you know what? They call themselves, in history, the Middle Ages in Europe are called the Dark Ages. There is a reason why they're called the Dark Ages. Because of scientific evidence like that. Okay? Now, and many more issues, and many, many more things, okay? Now, again, this is not to start hating Europe, it's just to open your eyes a little bit to what people nowadays believe, that Europe is so advanced. And, in the 19th century, there were kings in France. France was at that time an empire. They invented, mashallah, the makeup, and they invented the perfume. You know why? Because they stank against the wind, because they would not wash, so they had to put perfume on themselves to make them smell nice. Plus, they wouldn't wash, so they would use makeup, to put on their... This is a known common thing. You find at the court of King Louis XIV, this was absolutely normal. Okay? And the whiter they were, of course, the more status they have in society. Okay? Light color. This went back to their racist behavior in Africa. Okay? The darker you are, the lower you are in society. The lighter you are, the higher you are in society, in reputation. This is a very racist attitude towards people, of course, and a very European one, unfortunately, which colonized people have taken over. In South America, in Africa, you will find this nowadays. You will find an inferiority complex of people have developed that because of their past. Again, history. So now, let's look back again. Alfama. Alfama. Let me tell you, it's a European term. It's a part of the world. It's in Europe, and it's yes.
Lisbon?
Yeah. Have you been to Lisbon?
Huh?
Have you been to Lisbon?
No.
Portugal. Now, the brother said correctly, Alfama is the oldest part of Lisbon, the capital of Spain, Portugal. Now, as I said before, Portugal was also part of the Muslim world, right? And Lisbon, Lisboa, was an Arabic city. And Alfama, as you hear, any word in any European language starting with al is originally Arabic. Alfama is an Arabic term. That's what they call the oldest part in Portugal, in Lisbon. Now, Provençal troubadour, the troubadours. Have you ever heard of the troubadours? Yes.
Can you tell them why Portugal is called Portugal?
Oh, yes, of course. Portugal. Why is it called Portugal? If you go to Portugal from the north to the south, it's full of orange trees. Orange. What is orange in Arabic? Portugal. The whole country is called Portugal because of the Muslim Arabs. Again, the Arabic language was the main language of the Muslims, right? And it's called Portugal. Portugal. The country of oranges. And you will find many names of cities and villages and towns in Spain, throughout Spain. Portugal is just significant because of the whole country, right? And Alfama, again, is part of Lisbon. So, we spoke about the Provence in the south of France, the troubadours. Who has grown up with very important literature for children, Asterix and Obelix? Has anybody, Asterix and Obelix, yeah? MashaAllah, you must be from here, you must be European, right? You're not Arab or something, right? Are you? Turkish. Oh, you see, so, then you must know that Asterix and Obelix had a friend with them, right? Or not a friend, he was in the village together with them, right? And he was a singer. He was playing the harp, right? He was a troubadour. You know him? What's his name again? Okay. Do you remember his name? No? Cacophonics, isn't it? Okay. So he used to play the harp. He was a troubadour. In France, France became known for its troubadours. What is this harp playing and singing? What was he singing? Singing is nothing else but poetry. Where does poetry come from? From the Muslim world. What did the Muslims leave behind in France, in Portugal, and in Spain? The development of the troubadours. Poetry, which became songs. We became a song, which became later something that people sang. And not only in the Provence, but it became famous there, but also in Spain and in Portugal. And you know what? Malta. What about Malta? Any idea about Malta? The island of Malta? What do they speak there? Maltese. What is Maltese?
A little bit of Arabic.
The only Arabic dialect in the whole Western world which is written in Latin. It's an Arabic dialect, as much a dialect as Libyan is a dialect, as Egyptian is a dialect, as Moroccan is a dialect. Maltese is another Arabic dialect, but it's the only one written with the Latin alphabet. And that's what the Muslims have left behind in Malta. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? That people in Malta say Salaam Alaikum to each other, and they are not Muslims. People in Malta say Kefak, and they are not Muslims. They don't speak Arabic. They mean, how are you? Okay? They use Arabic terminology. They even, what is this here? This is Maltese. Can somebody read this here for me? Gzira. Gzira comes from Arabic, Jazira. Jazira in Arabic means island. Gzira in Maltese means island. Ramadan. Ramadan. But not Ramadan. For the Maltese Christians, Catholic nation of 98% Catholics, they call Ramadan the fast of the Lent, of a Christian celebration. It's 40 days. I don't know if you're familiar with the Christian fasting, Christian understanding of the world. They fast for, the few who do it. In Malta, for example, because it's a Catholic country, they do their fast during the Lent period, right, for 40 days. And they call it Ramadan, meaning Ramadan. I mean, my God, not even for this one they have another terminology. They use the Arabic terminology for something which is not Islamic at all. Now, it's again mind-blowing, isn't it? Now, we spoke about Provence, Azulejos again. Azulejos, any idea? When you go to Portugal or to Spain, mainly to Portugal nowadays, you will find, whoever has seen Portuguese art, you will find on the walls tiles in blue, specifically blue. And they always have, nowadays, always a religious affiliation, something that is part of the Catholic religion, or very often. But in the time of the Muslims in Portugal and in Spain, that was Islamic art. They left this behind for the Portuguese and the Spaniards nowadays. So if you go, you can buy these souvenirs in Portugal or in Spain, in the souvenir shops. You can find azulejos, typical art that has become now typical Portuguese, but it's actually originally Muslim, Islamic art. Islamic Arabic. Okay, and you will find it in Spain and in Portugal. Tiles. Even the churches are full. In Portugal, you will find a lot of Portuguese churches full of this type of art. And last but not least, La Convivencia. We left the best one at the end. What is La Convivencia? Anybody speak Spanish? La Convivencia means coexistence, cohabitation. That was the Muslim policy in Spain and in Portugal, in Al-Andalus. That meant not democracy and Sharia law and all this nonsense, but what it means and what it meant that time, yes, they lived in an Islamic state, but part of the Islamic understanding of a state is la convivencia, which means coexistence, that Christians and Muslims and Jews would live together with each other. That was the official policy of the Muslim state. So now, if you contrast this with what we know of a certain Islamic state down there, which they call themselves Islamic State, is this what Islam teaches? You contrast it, and you can just do it with knowledge. Knowledge is power. You can just understand what is happening around you if you look into history, and if you look into our understanding of proper Islam, or proper understanding of Islam. Convivencia is part of Islam. Convivencia is the Islamic policy, where Sharia is the law, and within this law is part convivencia. That means we allow Ahl al-Kitab, the people of the book, Christians and Jews, to practice freely their religion and even have their own law courts. All this has happened. The Ottoman Empire did that. The Ottoman Empire that is accused nowadays of being so uncivilized and intolerant. This again is proof that they don't want us to know the truth. They teach you all this nonsense as they did me. You know, when I was going to Greek school in Germany, they taught me the nonsense of hating the Turks because they came to Greece and they raped our women and killed our children. The question still until today is, well, how come we have a nation of Greek people of 11 million people nowadays if they killed all our children and raped our women? No, I mean, it's a logical understanding, isn't it? If it really happened, I mean, I'm just asking myself, and I asked them even that time, although I was, 10 years old, and I was wondering, how come if they killed all our children, we wouldn't have children anymore? So how come we still have a Greek nation after 600 years, 500, 600, 700 years of Ottoman rule in Greece? The Balkan. We had now, recently, a war. And they would call these people, Muslims, they would call them Turks. Why? Because of their history and their past. They would call their own people, Bosnian people, people who would speak the same language with them, who would look like them, who even would marry the other women, they would marry non-Muslim women, drink alcohol, they would indulge in anything, they would call them still Turks. You see? What does Allah say? Think carefully. What does Allah say? If you become like them, they will want you always. It will always, there's a clear thing, it will always be that the non-Muslims will always want the Muslims to turn like them, to become like them. And the only benefit that they have of this is to get you away from that shaitan's game, to take you away from Jannah, to take you away from paradise, to take you away from actually something that is, of course, the aim of anybody should be. Christian, Jew, Muslim, that should be the aim of anybody. We live here 70, 80, 90, 100 years. Have you ever thought about it? When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I enjoyed my life, as they call it. Okay? I had fun. According to their understanding of fun. I would go to my mother's island, I would be a tour guide, I would meet women, I would have a life that anybody would like to have when they're 18, 19, 20. But one day I woke up and I said, wait a second. Is this the meaning of life? Can this be the meaning of life? Waking up every day next to somebody else? Feeling that that's the only thing you're looking after? Feeling that this is the only thing you're after? And money, make money. Once you have money, this is not something, when you die, you will not take it with you. That's something that will stay here. And in the end, your children, your wife maybe, whoever, will fight over you, what you have left behind, which you fought like crazy for. You got a heart attack and you died in the end. You didn't even enjoy it. How many people do I know personally who were fighting to get to pension age and to go back to their home countries and enjoy the house that they built during their lifetime? 20, 30, 40 years. 64 years old. Next year I'm going back to my home country and I'm going to enjoy my life. 65. Boom! Shortly before you could go back to Turkey. Shortly before you could go back to Bosnia. Shortly before you could go back to Pakistan. Dead. Finished. End of story. That was his life. That was his life, and this is our life. We think that we live 100 years, fine, live 200 years. Nobody has lived longer than that. Once we will all die, all of us. So now we have to prepare for that. This is something, and that's the only thing that is true. That's the only thing we know. The only thing we know that after this here, the only thing that there is death. And if we don't prepare for that, how do you prepare for a degree in the end? How do you prepare for going somewhere next year? How do you prepare for buying a house and buying a car? Which I'm not saying is not important in this life, yes, but it's something for this life. Don't put this above the deen. The most important thing is the deen. Now, coming closely to the end. Oh, actually, no, we still have 15 minutes, fine. Now, take a look at the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, Europe. And the countries of the Mediterranean Sea are the countries of high civilization. Okay? That's where civilization of Europe originally came from, right? We cannot expect people in the Central European area or in Northern Europe to develop civilization with these climates. They were happy to cover themselves of the cold. Now, in the South, okay, we have people like Aristotle, Platon, Sophocles, right? We had the Roman Empire, with the ancient Greek Empire, right? So now, these civilizations brought civilization to the rest of Europe. But without the influence of the Muslims coming from North Africa, Greek and ancient Roman sources were forgotten before the Renaissance. What Renaissance meant was simply digging them out again. Digging Aristotle, Sophocles, and Platon, digging them out again and try to learn what they said. Not everything Aristotle, Platon, and Sophocles said were right, of course. Just because I'm Greek does not mean that they were right. But the Muslims took their sources, translated them into Arabic, learned what they could learn from them, and corrected them. Do you understand? Do you see that Aristotle's idea of the world was that the world actually is nothing else but the center of the world, right? The center of the universe. That was corrected by the Muslims. It is not the center of the universe. The Catholic Church still believes in that. You know, the Pope, the representative of God on earth, according to the Catholic Church, who doesn't make mistakes, is infallible, according to the Catholic Church, this very same person believes that the center of the world, has to believe, otherwise he would not be able to be the Pope of the Catholic Church, that the center of the universe is this earth. Do you understand why Europe needed a renaissance? Because there was a time once when Europe was actually under the suppression of the Catholic Church. And it was clearly like this, that the Catholic Church and the Catholic clergy would make use of people's fear and misunderstanding. So, in the end, they ended up owning most of, Europe, Catholic Church especially. Now in Greece, we have, for example, still a third of Greece belongs to the Orthodox Church. Okay? And still they would not want to give it back. They have properties you cannot imagine. Nobody does anything with these properties, but they're just there. And nobody can do anything because they belong to the church. This is a middle-aged kind of way of thinking. But in Islam, we don't have clergy. Very important to understand that. A very important point that makes Islam very different to Christianity. Any Christian denomination has clergy. The Catholics have, the Protestants have, the Orthodox have. The Jews have rabbis. We don't have imams. This imam idea, I just told you, I was imam just now when we make asar. We just made salah here and I was imam. My son is imam at my home sometimes. Imam means amama, somebody who prays in front of the congregation. It can be, on one day, it can be 5 different people. And you don't need to go to school to become an imam. You need to be somebody who has knowledge of the deen, who knows at least the Surah Al-Fatiha and maybe another surah from the Quran. That's all. And you can lead the congregation in the salah, in the prayer, the time. That's an imam. An imam is not a priest. And again, in certain countries it has developed like this, but because of their influence from outside. For example, let's take Turkey as an example. Turkey, mashallah, is a beautiful country, nice people, but big misunderstanding of Islam. Okay? They are developing imams there who have become like priests in Greece. Why? Because of the Byzantine Empire. The influence of the Byzantiums before on the Ottomans was so massive, that actually they copied everything that they found when they went to Constantinople, Byzantium. And this has developed nowadays a kind of clergy type of situation in Turkey and in certain other countries, okay? But we have to be clear about this one. Pure Islam, originally, there is nothing like imam, like the imam being a priest, and you go to school and you come out, you become a doctor in Islamic studies, whatever you are, all right? So, no, we don't have priests and rabbis and bishops and all the stuff in Islam. We don't have these things, all right? So just to make this clear. Now, anybody who knows what this is? It's a mosque. Are you sure? Okay, it's a mosque in Cordoba. Does it look like a mosque according to your understanding of a mosque? Do we have people here from probably, what I saw, UAE? Anybody here? Emirates? MashaAllah, Habibi. من وين؟ من دبي or Sharqa or من Abu Dhabi? Abu Dhabi. Anybody else? No? Arabs? Good. Alhamdulillah, good, so mashallah. Now, does this mosque remind you of a mosque that you have seen in your country? No. Does this mosque remind you of a country in your country in Turkey? No. Does this mosque remind you of where you're from, brother? India? Pakistan? Tanzania, mashallah. Does this mosque remind you of Pakistan? Bangladesh? Akhi, does this remind you of country? No.
In my country, I have mosque like this.
You have a mosque like this? Where in this country, where are you from? In Pakistan. You have a mosque like this, right?
Many mosques
Like this? Okay. So where is the minaret?
in the hall and
No. Where is the minaret? Do you have a minaret also? Where is the minaret? Minara. Yeah. Where is the minaret? This is the minaret? This one here? Is like this in Pakistan?
like Minar.
So it's not, right?
Pole. Is it in trying to pole?
Okay. Now, the point I'm trying to make here, this is a Spanish mosque. It's in Cordoba, and it was established by the first Muslims in the 8th century. This is a Spanish mosque. It is nowhere close to any other mosque we know in the Muslim world. That was part of the Muslim world, right? Spain, Al-Andalus was part of the Muslim world. But it developed its own Islam, its own architecture, not Islam in a way of no 5 pillars. Of course, Islam as a base, as a root, every Muslim in the world follows the same Islam. But architecturally, for example, that's a different type of architecture, which is typically Spanish Cordoba. You'll find this in Al-Andalus, in Andalusia. Now, this is the inside. Okay? Gives you a little bit of an idea. That's the outside by night. Okay? Now, and this is the Alhambra in Granada. It's a castle, like any other castle. Now, why I'm showing you this, inside, right, you have this, if you go to Al-Andalus, you will find a beautiful piece of art. Inside, of course, of the mosques, they will look like what you understand a mosque. The outside was kept to make it look like its environment, to fit into the environment. Just a moment. So, when the Muslims arrived in Spain, Europe, they started building European-looking architectural mosques. When the Ottoman Turks arrived in Constantinople, Byzantium, they started building what you call nowadays Turkish mosques. These are not Turkish mosques, these are Byzantine-style architecture. The Byzantiums, or the Greek Orthodox people from before, had an own architectural style. The dome, right, where you see the Hagia Sophia, right? If you go to Istanbul, let's be honest, they all look the same. You don't know where you are. In the end, you have to look at it. No. All right, so they all look like Hagia Sophia. It was a model for the architect, especially Mimar Sinan, for the architect Mimar Sinan, for example, to copy the architectural style. There is nothing wrong with that's Islam. Why I'm saying that is that's what it means to be a tolerant Muslim. When you come to a country where the surrounding of the buildings that are there are brick buildings like in this country, then I want to see a brick building looking like mosque. No Pakistani or Bangladeshi mosque. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? When I go to Africa and I go to Mauritania, to Mali, to Cote d'Ivoire, wherever there are Muslims, and I look at the mosques there, they're made out of mud. They all look like the surrounding. That's Islam. Do you understand that? Through our history, we'll understand the tolerance of Islam. But when the Christians went to Africa, especially the French, have you seen what they did in Senegal or in Ivory Coast or in certain other parts of the world where the French went to and they implemented and imposed their religion and their cathedrals? They all look like in Paris. They all look like cathedrals in Paris. Whereas the Muslims who went to Africa, fit everything into the surrounding. They went to the Balkan, they fit everything into the surrounding. They went to Spain, they fit it into the surrounding. They went to other parts of the world and they've made them fit into the surrounding. Now, it's a very important point I'm trying to make here. Now, this is all, I'm showing you just some beautiful piece of art in Spain. This is all Spain. This is all Spain. This is the modern mosque in Madrid. And you see, do you see here the modern mosque in Madrid? This was not made by our ancestors. You see typical minaret, typical Islamic style. That is not Spanish. That is imported from Morocco. And that's what our Pakistani brothers do also in this country. That's what our Turkish brothers do also in Germany. That's what our Moroccan brothers also do in Holland. They bring over their understanding and architecture of their country, and then they wonder when a German grandmother is passing by the German mosque and considers this a Turkish mosque. Right? And then they wonder when the politicians in Britain, talk about an imported Islam. Well, I'm neither Turkish, nor am I Arabic, nor am I whatever. I'm Greek, I'm European, and I'm Muslim. Alhamdulillah. And I would like to have Islam as part of Europe, as it was. We have seen 711, the first Muslim arrived in Europe in Spain. 711. Islam was not imported in the 60s by your parents or by mine. Okay? Islam was not imported in the 1960s. It was here already before. There were Spanish Muslims, there were Portuguese Muslims, there were Italian Muslims here. And Islam had become so colorful that there were different languages, European languages that were spoken amongst the Muslims. There were Greek-speaking Muslims, there were Italian-speaking Muslims, there were Spanish-speaking Muslims. Now, so we have to get away from the idea, going back to our home country. Now, this is in Gibraltar. This is in Gibraltar, the Islamic Center of Gibraltar. Again, a new invention. Now in Portugal, as we mentioned before, if you just take a close look at the map of Portugal quickly, look at the names of the cities. This one is called Mora. This one is called Mura. It comes from Moors. Okay? Now, Alcácer, Dosal, Alcácer is Arabic. Okay? Now, and so on and so on. Many more. The Islamic Center in Lisbon. We're living in a day and age where we have a lot of Muslims in Europe without mosques, like in Athens, and we have mosques without Muslims. This is one of them. The Islamic Center in Lisbon has a tiny minority of Muslims, 0.1% of the whole population of Portugal, Lisbon. Nowadays, all those Muslims who used to live in Portugal, who used to be part of the Islamic Empire, have all disappeared. What happened to them? What happened to the Muslims living in Spain and Portugal, such a big civilization? What happened? You want the soft version or the hard version? The hard version, very simple. Queen Isabella came down, the Catholic queen and king, and they killed them all. They signed a contract with the Muslims, which allowed the Muslims in Granada, the last city of Muslim Spain, in 1492, allowed the Muslims in Granada to stay there, to practice their deen freely, to be dressed as Muslims, to have their adhan and everything. But within 7 years, guys, believe it or not, within 7 years, the contract was broken, the Jews had to leave already the country, and then the Muslims followed. And they had to become either Christian, Catholic, or they had to leave the country, or they were killed, which happened to most of them. Very simple facts in history. Okay? 7 years. The Muslims lasted in Spain for 700 years. And the Christians could not live longer with a Muslim minority than 7 years. Now, coming back to the point that I made before. When we are here, I would like to have Islam being integrated, being part of society, having British mosques, having this as part of society so that we are part of society as well. That does not mean that we should not learn from our history. I'm not saying that there is no problem here. I'm saying that we have to learn from our history as well. This is part of our history. There were 700 years of Muslims living in Spain. There were Spanish Muslims, more Spanish Muslims than any European sitting here at this moment. All of them disappeared. We have to learn from this history. And you know what? We're talking about 1492. We're talking about how many centuries ago? Many centuries ago, right? You can say that was that time, right? What happened between 1992 and 1995? Anybody aware of that? What happened in Europe between 1992 and 1995? Is anybody aware of this? Sorry? Okay. Any other idea? Good. Now, a tiny minority can answer this question. What happened 60 years ago in the 1940s in Germany? Wow, everybody can say it's the Holocaust. This is amazing. Everybody knows what happened 60 years ago in Germany, not in Britain. And nobody knows, or not many people know, what happened 20 years ago closer to us, in Bosnia. Yes, Germany. In Bosnia. What happened in Bosnia? In that time, Yugoslavia. A genocide of Muslims, a massacre. A clear genocide of Muslims, right? And they would call these Muslims Turks. And you can just understand this because of history. Okay? So now, I'm not saying, that everything is fine and nice and because we are here and everything is cool and okay, and we integrate ourselves and put the mosques there properly and everything. I'm not saying nothing can happen. I'm just telling you, wake up. I'm telling this to myself, wake up. I'm European. I'm very European. So now, what are they going to do to European Muslims? We have at this moment 150,000 German Muslims. At this moment in this country, officially around 120,000 British Muslims. In France, nearly 500,000 French Muslims. In Italy, we have a massive amount of Italian Muslims. What the hell are they going to do with us? Tell me. Now, if before the Second World War, that used to be a Christian civilization and Christian culture in Europe, and Europe was a Christian continent, after the Second World War, after the Holocaust, it became a Judeo-Christian civilization. So what has to happen to the Muslims in order to become a Muslim Judeo-Christian civilization? It's a question, I'll leave you with it. Now, that's in Portugal. That's what the Muslims left behind in Portugal. Not a lot of things, but some were left behind. That's how far the Muslims in Al-Andalus went. Up to the north, Asturias and the Basque country. Okay? Basically, the whole of Spain and the whole of Portugal was once a Muslim entity. Okay? And there is so much to talk about. There is so much to mention. But I think I'll just leave you with that. Now, the development of Al-Andalus, the last important fact that we have to remember, the last important, what we have to take out of history, out of the lesson out of history would be this. The Muslims they left the small part, as you saw before, up here for the Christians. They said, leave them. Leave them. No problem. In 750 already, that means 40 years after the entrance of the Muslims, that had become Christian already, the north, this one. By 800, the Christians had come up to here. By 1050 here, 1150, 1200, 1300, 1492, Granada. That was it. The development of basically the Reconquista. The Spanish call this Reconquista, the reconquest. Okay? What does it mean? Because of the disunity of the Muslims, the Christians could come in and take this country, basically make this Spain and Portugal as it is nowadays. Okay? And get rid of Jews and Muslims. And it's a very important fact here. We should not forget that the Jews were the first victims of anything that happened in Europe. There were Jews in Europe before the Muslims. And whenever something happened in Germany, or whenever something happened in France, whenever something happened in Italy, or in Britain even, in the 13th century Britain, they had banned the Jews. Whenever something was happening, it was the Jews' fault. They were always looking for somebody, it was always the Jews. Now, they've exchanged the Jews with somebody else. And we all know who the new Jews are, right? So now, it is very important not to forget our history. European history. That's our European history glory. Now, look at where the Muslims came from. Massive empire in what is nowadays Morocco, going down to Western Sahara. Okay, all this. Okay? Now, different empires followed, and so on and so on. I'm going to leave you here.